Welcome to the award-winning Superhuman Academy podcast, where we interview extraordinary people to give you the skills and strategies to overcome the impossible. And now, here's your host, Jonathan Levy.
Before we get started, I want to take a moment to talk to you guys about personal development. You see, if I've learned anything over the last 5 years of hosting this show, it's that the journey of self-improvement never ends. There's always a way to improve and grow. That's why my team and I have recently launched Superhuman Squad, an all-access pass to our full library of personal development courses. Think of it as the Netflix of personal development. For just $49 a month, you get access to each and every one of our premium courses, which sell for as much as $399 each. Best of all, you'll be the first to gain access to our new courses that we're developing in partnership with some of the most esteemed thought leaders we've ever hosted on the show. To get started, simply visit superhumanacademy.com. Greetings, SuperFriends, and welcome to this week's episode. You guys, today's episode is going to make some of you a little bit uncomfortable, but I want you to push through that because today we're talking about something that is very, very important, a topic that I have been passionately fascinated in for years and years and years, and that is money and the mindset around money. What does money mean in your life? What relationship do you have with money? How do you use money? And how do you use it to actually make your life better and the lives of those you care about? We're joined by Aggie Kowalski. She's a mindset coach who teaches the missing piece to money and wealth manifestations. She has a therapy background and has studied thousands of success patterns and developed her own unique method, Permission to Prosper, which she uses to coach entrepreneurs, real estate agents, artists, actors, and other people in breaking their income ceilings to create a new money reality. You've seen Aggie on popular media like Forbes, Thrive Global, USA Weekly, and Bustle, demonstrating how to neutralize manifestation blocks around wealth and success. Now, how many of you, be honest, are a little uncomfortable talking about money or are a little stressed out about the way money shows up or doesn't show up in your life? Well, I want you to pay very special attention to this episode because it's not just about how to make more money. It's also about how to be happier with money. It's about how to be more at peace with your money situation. And it's about how to push through all of those things to find prosperity, happiness, and mental health around money. I really enjoyed the episode. You'll see we just talked, and I didn't ask any of the standard questions, which is usually a good sign that I'm having a lot of fun. So without any further ado, Miss Aggie Kowalski. Aggie Kowalski, welcome to the show. How are you?
I'm so good. So excited to be here, Jonathan.
I'm excited to have you here because I feel strongly about what you teach and I've learned it the hard way. And I really hope we can save a lot of people today from learning it the hard way. But I think it's also a lesson that needs to be relearned every time we hit a bump in life. And, you know, we all hit bumps and I've hit a few bumps and I think I'm going to benefit a lot from today's conversation as well.
Awesome. Yeah, I think absolutely that sometimes we can avoid learning it the hard way, but certainly if we can give people some tools to make that ride a little bit smoother, I'm excited to do that.
Totally. So for the audience who hasn't had the opportunity to cyber stalk you like I have, tell us a bit about who you are, what you do, and then I'm going to ask you why you do it.
Yeah. So my name is Agnes. I'm a wealth therapist. And my background is in psychotherapy. I was in private practice for many years. And I help people shift and heal their relationship to money. In essence, whatever they're projecting onto money, we try to shift those perceptions so that they can have this neutral relationship to money and then be able to create whatever they want.
I love that. Now, I'm going to push on relationship to money. What does it mean to have a relationship to money?
Yeah, well, you know, as a therapist, I obviously worked with relationships a lot, people's relationship to themselves, people's relationship to other people in their lives. And I really started to look at the relationship to money as a relationship, as if this were a person, because so much is projected onto it that you really can work with it as if you were a couple.
Okay, I love that. So why would I want to work on my relationship with money? By the way, I totally love, again, what you said, but I'm playing devil's advocate here. Why would I want to change my relationship to money? And what is the relationship that most people have with money, I guess?
Yeah, you might want to change your relationship to money if it stresses you out. Like if it's not a harmonious connection, it's probably not going to feel good to interact with money. And it's a thing that we think about a lot in everyday life. Like we have multiple transactions usually taking place every single day. So every single day, it's passing through our nervous system. It's passing through our emotional brain, what we're thinking, feeling about this concept, about this energy of money. And so having that relationship be harmonious, I think, is pretty important. It's like food. If you were to write down how many times a day you're interacting or thinking about money, you'd probably be surprised at how much you do that.
Wow, this is cool because, I think a lot of people, when they think about the idea of improving their relationship, if they think on that term or not, to money, it's about making more of it. But it sounds to me like this isn't just about making more money, because it sounds to me like even someone who has plenty of money can have a really unhealthy relationship with it.
Exactly. And that's what it's really about, is understanding what are all the perceptions and patterns I have going on in this relationship with money. Because even if I do have a lot, maybe the way that I go about earning it doesn't feel good. Maybe the way I go about spending it doesn't feel good. Maybe just the way that I experience it feels crappy in my body. There's all kinds of subconscious things going on under the surface. And, my thing is all about getting to neutral with it. So, the positive psychology and everything, that whole movement is amazing. However, I think, there can be a lot to be found in neutral, at least to get to neutral, because then you're open to all kinds of things. You're open to the unknown, but you're also open to unlimited possibilities, rather than being super specific about, it's got to look like this.
I really like that because in the last few days, my folks actually got here from abroad. And it's always a reminder whenever I'm with them of the values of money that I was brought up with versus the ones that I learned as I started being around. And not to say that my parents weren't financially successful, but they were from a different generation. And every parent's dream is that their child will become more successful than them. And my parents, I think, did a really good job with that. And I have had to shift my quote relationship to money, or my perception to money, a lot in order to get where I am. And as a result of getting where I am and being around multimillionaires and even billionaires.
Mm-hmm.
So it's always a reminder when mom and dad come into town and we think about things so differently.
It's true. And you've had this experience of having to shift, that identity and that relationship around money. And thankfully, your parents, really set you up, it sounds like, in a positive way to be, successful with money. But that's not always the case. Most people's relationship to money is really challenging. It either can be that they are disconnected from it as a relationship at all. It's something that's happening to them, like bills are happening to me, or I'm earning this money is happening to me. It's something that they're just really not connected to, which, can't be good. If you want to create something with it, you need to have some line of communication, some line of connection to it. So they can be disconnected from it. They can have just a negative feeling about it. Like they get anxious anytime they spend money, invest money, or ask for money. Specifically, if you're any kind of entrepreneur, those things got to be clear, or else people are going to feel it on the other end.
Mm-hmm.
But I loved what you were saying about being around our parents reminds us of, what we kind of grew up with and what went in there subconsciously, because that's such a huge piece of how we create what we create in our relationship with money.
Yes. Now, So we know a little bit about what an unhealthy relationship with money is. It's if you're feeling stress. I would add on there, like, if you're feeling that you don't have enough, or you're feeling that money is running your life, which I believe you did actually say, if you believe like you're not happy with the way you make it. What does a good relationship with money look like? Because I have these secrets of adulthood that I live by, and actually 2 of them involve money, but I want to hear what you have to say. Paint a picture for me of what a healthy relationship looks like. And I think this is a funny question, because as listeners of the podcast will know, I didn't know what a healthy relationship with another human being looked like until about 2.5 years ago. So it's certain that a lot of people out there don't know that, and don't know also what a healthy relationship to money looks like.
Yeah, I think it's going to be slightly different for every person, right? The way we're designed is different from one person to another. So our relationship and what a perfect version of that is going to be different for all of us. And I think that's really important. It's really important to recognize that you can create new money rules. You can create new ways of interacting with money, because we absorb so many values that aren't our own. For me, having a healthy relationship with money means that what I'm giving, I'm getting back. It feels like I'm not always giving too much and then not getting back what I'm giving. And for me, that's what a really harmonious relationship looks like, that I'm getting more than I need, that I'm really taken care of. That's for me what feels like a healthy relationship. So it's going to be different for everyone, but you'll notice, when things don't feel in alignment, when you're undercharging or underpricing yourself, or not making the wage that feels correct for you, you can sort of notice what's not correct about it, and then move towards resonating with what you would like in that relationship. So yeah, ideally it's harmonious. It feels good that the work that you're doing, or, selling, or in your workplace, that it feels like it's being reciprocated, that you feel either no charge, it feels very neutral when you're spending money or investing, because you've already made the decision and the decision has been cleared. And receiving as well, right? That receiving feels good, that there isn't weirdness about that it feels good in your body. A lot of it will tell you, if you can slow down enough, your body will tell you, your emotions will tell you what feels correct about this relationship and what doesn't. So in terms of an ideal relationship, it feels good. It feels good in your body. It feels good to interact with it in a variety of ways in your life.
I really like that. And, I realized I probably should have asked this question before, but what is money to you? I've recently done some work with actually a therapist about this and figuring out what money means to me. When you work with a client, what does money ultimately mean for us, I guess, is going to influence what our relationship to it is.
100%. For me, money is really a placeholder, right? Money is a placeholder for X, for my feeling of worthiness, for my feeling of value. And for me, I think it's been an evolution. At the beginning, for me, money meant freedom. Money meant respect. Money meant that I was now one of those people that I never thought I could be. And so there was a lot of pressure in that relationship too, that I had to work through, because very much growing up, money was on a pedestal. Money was the thing that controlled our decisions, controlled our lifestyle, controlled our level of happiness. It was very much something that we couldn't be at the same level at. It had power over us. So for me, shifting that was a huge piece in having it feel equal to me. So now money for me really, really speaks to me about my value. When things start to feel, I think people, sometimes I'll have this experience with clients and with myself as well. They'll outgrow a certain income level and it'll no longer feel good. It will no longer feel congruent with the level of value that they feel about themselves. And then they have to, kind of take a look at, okay, money right now is a placeholder for value for me because I'm feeling undervalued. So I think it's a placeholder at different times in your life for different things.
That's a really interesting concept, that it can mean different things at different stages. For me, for a long time, and then this is what I realized working with a coach, is money for me is freedom. Like I actually don't care about it as a status symbol so much as I care about it as a freedom. And I feel like if I don't earn enough in a given period, that my options are closing in on me, that I can no longer live where I want, travel where I want, do the things that I want to do. I feel like my options are closing in on me. And that's why money is so important to me, despite the fact that I'm not a particularly materialistic person. And I think it's interesting. And now as I'm starting to form a family, money is also security, right? And it's comfort and it's a lot of other things. And for some people, you're right. It is self-worth, or it is keeping score, and it's accomplishment and achievement. For other people, money is a mark of their contribution, because I agree with you that you can't earn money unless you're generating value for other people.
Yeah, I love that reflection. Absolutely. It will mean security. But as soon as we give our power away to it, in a sense, like money means security, or when I have the money, I'll have security, right? It starts to give us this sense of, it's not going to fulfill that. It's a placeholder. It means I need to feel secure, right? I need to feel secure in what I'm doing and what I'm offering, in my ability to manifest, and I think whenever it starts to become a placeholder, it's a signal to us like, hey, something needs to be worked on in this department. Like I need to create more wealth because I want to feel more secure in what I'm doing. So I think it's a really great indicator and sort of a pulse of where we're at.
I would agree with that. Now, Aggie, you talked a little bit about growing up, money had this deep meaning and importance that no longer represents the way you feel about it. I often find that people who are as passionate and committed to what they're doing as you and I are doing it from a place of real understanding and real pain around the topic. I, for example, notoriously was the dumb kid in class and felt like I wasn't enough. I always tell people, you don't start a podcast about becoming superhuman because you were the most liked person growing up. Tell me a bit about your experience with money growing up and why this became so important to you to share with others.
Yeah. So my family escaped communism in Poland and we moved to Canada. We got a visa to come to Canada. And so we were immigrants. And from the beginning, there was a sense of not belonging. I didn't speak the language when I first came to Canada. And my parents had lost their status from their country. So my dad went from being a chief engineer to a security guard. My mom went from having a, very lucrative administrative career in the Naval Academy to making muffins in a factory. So from the beginning, it felt like we were in this land of opportunity and it represented struggle. Like it didn't matter how smart you were. It didn't matter how talented you were, that there was going to be this separation. There was going to be the separation between us and them, and people who are wealthy and people who are not, and immigrants and those who were established and had their families here for a long time and had that whole support system. So I feel like I kind of started my life thinking that was just the way that it was. And the older I got, the more I was struggling with that, and the more I was trying to find out, why am I so adamant that it has to be this way? And I became a therapist to, heal all this like dysfunction around belonging and finding my place in the world. Much like you said, healing relationships is because I didn't have very good ones. I didn't feel very supported. I didn't feel like I belonged. And that included, I felt like I didn't belong with wealth. I felt like I didn't belong with money. And so that's really what started my journey. I was a therapist, but I also in that time studied, wealth patterns. I studied mindset. I was like, why can't I get past $50,000 a year? Why is that my income ceiling? And it was really painful. It was really painful kind of growing up feeling like not one of those people and trying to bridge the gap. And I eventually did through a lot of proving myself, which wasn't really sustainable. Because you can will things to happen. You can, prove that you can do it, but you also burn out that way relatively quickly because it's action based, right? As you know, you're laughing. Tell me how you relate to that.
Well, it's kind of like product market fit, right? We're doing in our mastermind, our membership group right now, we're doing a whole entrepreneurship side hustle thing to help people generate income on the side. And Steve Glaveski is doing an awesome job. So that's fresh on my mind because we did a broadcast on that this morning. But it's like product market fit. It's like when you're building a business, you can try and you can hustle and you can struggle and you can try and make all these things work. And it's like you will burn out and you will get nowhere. Or it's just when everything clicks together and you have what they call product market fit. It's like everything just hums and all of a sudden money starts pouring in and you can't even control it. It's coming in so fast. And it's that difference. As an entrepreneur, it's that difference. It's like, are you plugging away at the right thing versus struggling. And that's how it was for me in this recent business when we first started out. It's just like, oh my God, like that's what I'm going to make this month. And that's how many people we're going to impact this month. Like, whoa, I did not plan for that. Versus years and years and years of struggling to also break the 60 or 70K income earning. It was like, whoa, what is happening?
Right. And then when you said like the perfect fit, I use the word correct a lot in my work because when something's correct, it's easy, right? There's an ease to it when something is correct, but it sometimes takes you a very long time to find a thing that's correct. And, in the work that I did, for me, what was correct was coming out of that poor immigrant mentality. I was no longer that little girl that didn't fit in, whose parents had kind of like lost their wealth, but I was still very much identifying with that. My perceptions were identifying with that. And in fact, it was, kind of like a comfort thing to keep returning to because I knew that pain so well that it was just an easy thing. Like, I'll just go work on that versus resonating with a version of myself that was already wealthy. Which was much harder because I couldn't envision it really, which is why it's so amazing what you provide and the work that you do is allowing people to be around people who are who they want to be or how they want to show up in the world. And it gives them a picture and a vision. It's very hard to do that and make that leap when you have nothing to identify with.
Thank you. I appreciate that. And I'll add to that because, Eckhart Tolle, who I love, who changed my life a lot, talks about this idea of the pain body, that if someone is depressed or has low self-esteem, just as an example, I think is easier to explain. If someone believes that they're ugly and someone comes along and goes, actually, no, to me, you're the most beautiful person in the world, that's actually challenging their worldview. And their pain body is going to fight that, right? If someone believes that they're underappreciated and someone comes along and says, wow, I can't, you are wonderful and you're doing all this amazing work, that's going to challenge their worldview and they're going to find a way to justify why that person is wrong, mistaken, lying. And I think the same is true with money. Like people believe, it drives me crazy. Like I know people whose entire worldview around money is, well, I can't afford that because. And even if you go out of your way, like I'm a big travel hacker, right? So I posted a video on our YouTube channel, which I hope everyone will subscribe to, talking about how I often fly business class and how I do it for free and how I use this credit card and you might think that that's expensive, but if you just make the investment now, it'll come back to you 10 times later when you break the minimum spend and blah, 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 blah. And I know a lot of people who are like, well, you can afford to do that because you make so much money. And I'm like, but look at the math. Like you spend the $600 now, but then in 2 months, you're going to get $1,200. Like it's simple math. But just because the credit card says platinum on it, they're like, well, I could never afford that because, I'm not a 6-figure earner. And I'm like, you literally can look at the math. You know what I mean? But it challenges their worldview.
Yeah, it does. And we can take a look at the patterns of limitation and it's rigid, right? You want to pay attention to where you feel rigid. Those are the places that you want to soften, that you want to get into more flow around your beliefs and ideas and in your relationship to money, because at least question it. At least, give yourself the opportunity to massage that and soften it a little bit, because that's where you're going to get into neutral, like at least get to neutral about it. Okay, maybe I can't get a platinum card, but maybe I can release the charge around thinking that 6-figure people have it made. Because once you get to 6 figures, you realize it's not that much money either.
Yeah, no, it's not a lot of money. And I know a lot of 7-figure earners and net worth people. And I often I'm glad you say that, because I'm looking at buying an apartment here in Tel Aviv, another apartment, a bigger one. And I'm looking at it, and this is maybe going to sound egotistical, but I'm in not just the 1%, I'm in like the 10th of the 1% income earners here in Israel. And I'm like, if I can't afford the kind of place that I want, then who can? Like, holy crap. So it just goes to show you, first off, a millionaire is not what it used to be, right?
No.
And also, doesn't matter what level you get to, there are 10 levels above, where as soon as you're flying business class, you're realizing, wait a minute, there are some of my friends who are flying private, and on and on and on and on. And there's always a level above, which can be super depressing, but also can be super inspiring, because it goes, well, first off, I still have something to aspire to. And second off, I'm not that different now than I was before, in the sense that I still have something to reach to.
Yeah. And it has to match your values. Like it, and I think that's an important thing. Sometimes it's like, it gets caught up into like an intellectual achievement, which isn't necessarily correct for you. Like if that's not a value for you and that's not important for you, like we started talking about, that for you, that value is freedom and security. But if it's not a value for you to fly first class, that's fine. It doesn't have to be. But sometimes we're not even aware of like what those values are, because we're too in the scarcity mindset to even think that far. And the truth is, when I was in a lot of scarcity, I wasn't even thinking realistically about money. I was not. I refused to. I refused to think about retirement. I refused to think about savings. I refused to think about investments. I was very focused on debt.
Wow.
I had to shift that to move into any kind of semblance of reality about money.
Yeah, totally. This episode is brought to you by Ambronite. Ambronite's plant-based meal replacement shakes are made of 100% real foods. They have everything you need and contain 0 preservatives, GMOs, or artificial BS. I recently got a shipment of Ambronite, and I have to say, I am pretty impressed. The product blends ridiculously well. It tastes great, not too sweet, and not like grass clippings either. And it actually keeps me satiated for 4+ hours. So this is one product that I will be carrying in my travel bag, putting in my desks, and placing in my kitchen cabinet. Now, to go ahead and get 10% off of Ambronite's complete meal and balanced meal shakes, visit ambronite.com/superhuman and make sure to use the coupon code superhuman at checkout. That's AMBRONITE.com/superhuman and use coupon code superhuman at checkout. And to anyone out there who's thinking, well, this may sound, again, wrong, and you're the coach, so correct me if I'm wrong, but there was a certain point in my life where, like I said, I was earning more money than I ever thought I would, and everything was just flowing, and it was wonderful. And I sat down with my friend, and I was like, he was like, well, what are your next goals? What are you going to do? Where are you going to go? And I said, I don't have goals. Like, I'm earning more than I could ever have wanted to. And he goes, well, okay, how much is that? And I said, X, Y, and Z. And he goes, what if that was what you could give away? That was just the 10% of your income that you could give away. And I was like, whoa, that's...
I just got chills. Yeah.
Yeah. What if that was the amount that you were just giving away on top of the stuff that you were investing in your family? And, Joe Polish, who's one of the most successful people I know, he loves to say, people who say money can't buy happiness just haven't given enough of it away. And I believe in that.
I love that so much. Yeah. The scarcity mindset is so focused on itself in a way. In a way, it seems like it's selfless, but it's actually quite selfish in a way, because it's so focused on what it doesn't have, on what it can't do, which is an opportunity to heal that, right? It's an opportunity to practice resonating with something else. And what I want listeners to really remember as they're listening to this, and some things might be triggering and some things might be inspiring, is that we're all on the same continuum of money. Like having a lot of money and not having a lot of money is still on the same continuum of money.
What do you mean by that?
Well, I just mean like if you think about it like a scale, like any kind of scale, they're on the same line. They're on the same continuum. Having a little or a lot is just, like you're moving that bar across, right? You can move it towards or you can move it to the lower end of the scale, but it's still on the same scale.
I get you. Well, let me ask a question then. Do you believe, and I go back and forth on this, but I think I know how I feel about it. Do you believe that simply by changing our mindset around money, we can actually invite more wealth into our lives? In the sense that if you adopt an abundance mindset as opposed to a scarcity mindset, and for those who don't know, an abundance mindset is kind of believing that there's enough love, enough money, enough whatever it may be for everyone out there, as opposed to treating money like it's a scarce resource. Do you believe that just by adopting that, we can actually earn more?
I think that that's a piece of the puzzle, right? I think it's a piece of the puzzle. And I think it would be a little bit simplistic to say that's the only answer, because I work with a lot of people who can manifest a lot of things, but cannot manifest money because money becomes the placeholder for something else. And money is tricky because it's so tied to our survival. If you don't if it stops, where does your brain go? It starts to freak out. It starts to go into that panic mode and activate that part of the brain, right? That fight or flight part of the brain. So I think that it absolutely can. And I think perspective on perceptions does change a lot. Like just thinking about the fact that it's on this scale starts to make it not a separation anymore. It's like, okay, I can choose to resonate on this end or I can choose to resonate on this end. Right now I'm resonating here because maybe I don't know how to resonate on this other end. And I need to practice that. I need to hang out with people like Jonathan and Aggie and see what they're teaching and see how they're watching their energy, right? But I think it is simplistic to say it's just that, because money itself has a different charge for people. People can be like, it's abundant, the universe has everything. But when it comes to money, it's like there's an asterisk. Do you know what I'm saying?
I do.
Yeah. So that's why I think it's important to examine this relationship. When you have no charge around money, I think then you can play on that scale. I think you can play on that, that it's an unlimited resource. When people give facts like, $1 billion goes through one blackjack table in Las Vegas. I mean, there's clearly enough money for everyone, right?
Right. Yeah. I like to think about it from an economic perspective, right? Where it's like, GDP has to grow in an economy, otherwise it dies. And that's part of the reason why inflation, I love to think about economics and it kind of, I geek out on it, but GDP has to grow. And that's part of the reason why inflation goes up 3% every year is there's more money being created every single day, literally. Not in a figurative way, like governments all over the world are printing money every single day. And that money has to go to someone, and it's going to people who are creating value. So all you need to do is be part of this growth of an economy, and you literally can make a ton of money. It's not hard. Well, I shouldn't say it's not hard. It's not a complex algorithm here.
Right. The worth and the value piece is a huge piece, and also there's a place of privilege in this conversation too, right?
Totally.
I mean, being white in North America is a place of privilege for me. So I get to speak from that place, even though I have this immigrant background, I have all these, things that I had to work through. It's still a place of privilege. And I just want to recognize that in this conversation, because I think that's important too.
100%. This conversation does remind me of a recent experience that I had, obviously feeling like I'd gone through a lot of money mindset changes. Again, being around people in Genius Network, being exposed to 7-figure earners and even 8-figure earners for the first time in my life. And I talked to someone, I'm looking to invest in real estate, and I talked to someone about lending and about the properties that I'm looking at. And they asked me, what's your goal? And I kind of like tensed up, and I realized like, it's okay. I'm comfortable saying this to me and my wife, but when I actually announce, and you know what, as a good exercise, I'm going to put this out in the world and not be shy about it, even though it makes me very uncomfortable. I told them my goal is for my real estate investments to bring me in $20,000 net every single month outside of all my business income. And I was like,
awesome,
expecting this person to go, whoa, but they didn't even flinch. This is someone who works with investors every single day. And it made me realize like, I still have some stuff out there where I'm like, who the hell am I? And why should I be able to earn that? And that's a ridiculous amount of money to earn for doing basically nothing. And this person didn't even miss a beat when I told them, how much I want to invest and where I want to invest it. They were just like, okay, yeah, great. So have you thought about where I'm like, wow, not even a pause. Literally didn't even blink twice. And it opened my mind to like, wow, I've still got some stuff, because I've met folks. I remember one time, I'll never forget it, at Summit at Sea. And this was the first year that my business had really grown enough to where I felt comfortable going to these conferences. And I even still had some imposter syndrome around like, oh my gosh, that's, the founder of Dropbox, and that's the CEO of Google. And then I'm here. And I asked someone, I was like, well, what are your goals in your business? Where do you grow from here? He's like, well, next year I'd like to make 5 million instead of 1. And I was just like, holy crap. Jeez, just say it like it is. I meant like, why I want to develop 3 new products, but yeah, go for it. And I was so uncomfortable about that it really made me question. And another thing I do want to share, but without hogging the total airspace, is I had a realization the other night when I asked someone how much they'd spent on their wedding, because I'm planning a wedding right now. And I realized they were very uncomfortable by that question. So I prefaced it with, I understand if you're not comfortable saying. And then I realized like that same friend has shared intimate details about, well, I guess I probably shouldn't say, about personal health, right? And I think it's so funny to me that people are comfortable sharing, like, when they have a surgery, what's going on in their body, but they're not comfortable sharing what's going on in their bank account. Blew my mind, like, just realizing this.
Oh, 100%. I love all of these examples so much because they're really examples of, what I call like how we decondition around money. And that's really the starting point for me, is to decondition all this stuff. Like, how do I feel about talking about money? How do I feel about claiming what I want? And I think, in your first example of, being really honest and transparent about what you want, from your real estate goals, that's such a huge piece. And I feel like that's such a huge piece I work on with clients is we have to kind of take off all this armor to get really honest about what we want. And good things start to happen when you do that. When you step into that honesty versus I want to have this and I want to have that, isn't necessarily the same thing as really being truthful and correct about claiming what it is that you want.
And why it is that you want it.
Yeah, to me, there's a really big distinction in those two things. And people can be like wild and crazy on all these things they want to manifest. But it's like, why do you even want that? And is it correct for you? Or is it just like an intellectual desire?
Yeah. And perhaps biggest of all, like, do you believe that it's possible and that you deserve it?
Do you believe that it's possible? Yeah.
And that was my thing with a relationship and manifesting a relationship, is deep down, I wanted all these things and I talked about how I wanted them and I talked about the type of relationship I wanted, but I didn't fundamentally believe. And it's tricky because talking about it, you can almost convince yourself that you believe it, but then you realize, I don't actually believe that I deserve this or that I'm capable of getting this.
Yes. And that's why I encourage clients and anyone who's listening, do stream of consciousness writing. It's the easiest way to see what you really think about stuff. Just, one of the exercises I give people to do is for the next 30 days, take out a $20 bill and just write about what you think about that every day for 5 minutes.
Right. Now, how do we change that's a good segue into how do we actually change our mindset around money? I mean, is this like meditation, free writing, working with a coach? What is it that you do with clients that actually changes their relationship to money?
I think changing perception. So a lot of the times you'll have to decondition first. The first process is deconditioning what you think about all this stuff. You need to have you need to put all your cards out on the table and see what's there. Number one, right? And there's nothing like better to awaken people than to put their cards out on the table and then to be like, you created this. You created what you have right now because this is what you believe you deserve. And it's a bit of a brutal wake up call to do that. When you're in that place of struggle, taking responsibility for it, right, is one. Deconditioning around it is that whole piece around getting to neutral. And there can be a number of ways of getting to neutral. It works for different people in different ways. For some people, it's going to be stream of consciousness writing. To me, that gets to a lot of subconscious stuff, is just to really keep writing. And when I say writing and journaling, my clients are writing 10 and 20 pages per sitting. They're not like writing in their journal, I am grateful for a page. That's not what I mean about stream of consciousness writing. Like, you want to get in there, you kind of have to wear your conscious mind down about what it would like to believe and actually get into, the nitty gritty. So deconditioning can happen like that. Surrendering to the emotion once you get down deeper is ultimately what I think happens in the release that then makes room for you to resonate with something else along that scale that we talked about. But you kind of have to dump and decondition first, get yourself into neutral so that you're not charged by seeing your bank account or by seeing, or by an investment. Right? That you can get yourself to neutral and just decide this is a correct decision for me to join, Jonathan's or Aggie's program. I've already made the decision. Now I need to get to neutral about the money because a part of me wants to freak out about that. Mm-hmm. Right? So getting to neutral can be EFT tapping, can be stream of consciousness writing. Mentorship was huge for me because it was part of the whole scarcity piece that I could do everything myself. So that comes up a lot for people. But those three things, I think, are the main things, is surrendering to the emotions until you get to a neutral place. And to remember that neutral, oftentimes people associate neutral with flat, like there is no charge. It's like a nothingness. But I want you to start thinking about neutral as unlimited also, where you're open to all possibilities, where you're open to the best versions, the best possible versions without knowing, because we are kind of limited in what we can even imagine.
Wow. I really, really like that. And it also, again, reminds me of another conversation I had with someone, and I'll have to change details, but we were at a workshop that cost $12,000. And I was comparing notes with other people in the room who, oh, you're in War Room. What does that cost? That costs $30K. Oh, you're in Genius Network. Okay, yeah, I'm in Genius Network too. That costs $25K. Oh, and I recently joined KBL, $15K. And this woman was sitting there like a ping pong ball back and forth and just going like, what is the deal with you guys? Like, how do you spend this much money, invest this much money in yourself? It was, 2 years in the making for me to decide to do this $12,000 program. And we had this whole conversation about psychological upgrades, as Ben Hardy would say, where the minute you write a $25,000 check, you start behaving like someone, an asset that is worth investing $25K in. And I believe the same is true with coaching. And I believe the same is true with many, many different things, where half the value of getting a master's degree is writing the check and believing that I now am worth this much because I am going to have a master's degree.
100%. I love that so much. And in one of the, stirring up questions that you put, like, what is your best money that you spent $100 on? And I was like, makeup, like really fancy makeup or skincare, because it makes you feel like $1 million. So whether it's like a $12,000 or $25,000 or $100 that may be a stretch for you, it's a really interesting exercise to just, you don't even have to do it. You can practice doing it in your head. Like, what is it going to feel like to write that check? What am I going to feel like? And allow your body to start calibrating that, because I really do feel like, numerous clients of mine, I had a client who had $100K week, like a month ago.
Outgoing or incoming?
Incoming.
Awesome.
And it's kind of wild to think about that amount of money for a solopreneur with no ad spent, like just really just organic income. And what was interesting was her body took a few weeks, like she got sick immediately afterwards. And that's, I've seen that quite a bit because it is like the body is trying to stay grounded while this very kind of ethereal experience is happening. When you're dealing with these bigger numbers and these bigger experiences in your consciousness, you want to be prepared for that. So that's why I'm saying practice that in your body, practice what that might feel like to start attuning yourself to what's possible.
Totally. Wow. So I can't believe it, but we've literally blown through all the time. I haven't asked you a single one of the questions I normally ask, and I don't regret that at all because this was an amazing and just really inspiring conversation. Aggie, where can people reach out to you and learn more, maybe get in touch about working with you?
Yeah, just on AgnesKowalski.com. I'm Agnes Kowalski on Facebook and on Instagram as well. So any of those places.
Really, really awesome. Now, before I thank you for spending your morning with us, I do want to ask if there is one really big takeaway that people learn from this podcast episode and they carry it with them for the rest of their lives, what would you hope for that to be?
No pressure.
No pressure.
Just for the rest of their lives. Okay. I would say don't override your internal GPS. If something is correct for you, if that $25,000 mastermind is correct for you, if that thing is correct for you, don't worry about the how. Don't override what's happening for you in that moment. And trust that. That's what I would say. Don't override your internal GPS.
I love that. Aggie, thank you so much for coming on the show. I really enjoyed it, and I know our audience did as well.
Thank you so much for having me. I learned a lot as well.
Thanks for tuning in to the award-winning Superhuman Academy podcast. For more great skills and strategies, or for links to any of the resources mentioned in this episode, visit superhuman.blog. While you're at it, please take a moment to share this episode with a friend and leave us a review on iTunes. We'll see you next week.